I don't need to go into too much, because I know we'll have a great discussion about it tonight. But I do want to introduce who is going to be speaking, and myself, by the way. I am Riley Niemock, I'm the gallery director. And thank you. And we also have a great team here. We have Mal Montoya, the president and CEO of the Milwaukee Arts Resource Network. Adam White is behind the camera. Bear with us as we take some documentation of tonight. And of course, Interval staff is serving drinks if you want something. We have complimentary black tea in the conference center, as well as interviews of the exhibiting artists, if you want to learn a little bit more about them. The panel will go until about 7, and then we'll have a little bit of a party afterwards. So please stick around, engage, and mingle, do whatever you want to talk. Talk to me, talk to the artists, all of it. All right, but today we have Amal Azzam, Nayfa Naji, Amelia Bader, Nada Alzalloum, and Rida Fatima. And I will let you guys take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Riley. So first, we just want to, introduce ourselves and then, like, what we do. If what medium you work with, you as an artist, you as a person, you just, who are you, and just tell us a little bit about yourself. So, Rida, if you'd like to start.
Hi. So my name is Rida. I'm originally from Pakistan. I moved here about 12 years ago. And I am a full-time artist and a mom. I do Arabic calligraphy and architectural paintings, mostly from Pakistan.
Hi, my name is Nada. I'm Palestinian. I've been here since I was young. My art is mostly digital-based art.
You're good. Sorry.
My art is usually like digital-based art, and I like to take photos of refugees, like from refugee camps or like on the boat, and change the background into something more fitting towards them, or to just show the culture behind the person, because sometimes when we see those photos, we forget that there's a person behind it. And currently, I work for a DV organization that's specific for Muslim women, and that's what I've been doing lately.
Hi, my name is Amelia. I'm Palestinian as well, but I was born here in Milwaukee, and I've been here my whole life, but I do go back almost every summer. And mostly what I do is cultural resistance and Islamic art. My main medium is acrylic on canvas, but I also do some digital artwork. Lately, what I've been doing is, so I'm a student at UW-Madison, and I recently started an art activism org there, so we'll talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. So I think we should start with just a nice little basic question, which is, what led you to create art today? How far back did it start? Is it something recent? Is it something that was really something that really impacted your life? How did it all begin for you guys?
So I come from an art-oriented family. My mother is an artist. My sister is a graphic designer. So it sounds like a cliche, but from the beginning, I knew I wanted to be in the arts field. My bachelor was in interior designing, but when I moved here to America, I started creating art, and that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
That's awesome. So 10 years from, okay, that's awesome. What about you, Nada?
So for me, I've always liked art since I was younger, but it was something that came and went all the time. I didn't go to school for anything art. I went for healthcare administration and business. But what started it for me is when the Syrian civil war happened and we were just flooded with all those photos, and it was just feeling like there's nothing I can do. And I got an iPad and I was playing on it. And I believe that one over there, the flower girl, is my first work. And I just saw her, and she was in like a refugee camp, and I felt like there's more to her. There's something behind her eyes, and that's how it started for me.
So I've loved art, I guess, like you guys, since I was young. I've basically been drawing since I could hold a pencil, and I always loved it in school, but I never really knew what I wanted to do with my artwork until Fanana Banana started. Before that, it was just random pieces of artwork like portraiture or landscape work, but now I focus more on cultural resistance and Islamic art, and Fanana helped me find that.
Yay. That's awesome. Well, Amelia, what does your creative process look like? So, in what medium do you like to use the most?
I prefer acrylic on canvas, but I have been experimenting recently with charcoal on paper, but most of my work is acrylic on canvas. I guess I don't really have like a specific creative process. Usually I'll think about what I want to paint beforehand, and I'll plan it out in my head or write down ideas, but I don't generally sketch it out unless it's a really big painting. I sort of just go for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. What about you, Nada?
So for me, I see a photo, and you know how they say like the eyes are a window to a person's soul, and I kind of like analyze it, and I try to get a feel for the person behind the photo, and I just go from that feeling or whatever I'm getting from the photo, and that's how I go. So sometimes I feel like this person should be surrounded by flowers, or this person should be surrounded by colors and lights and things like that. So it's just mostly like just looking at the person as a person instead of like a refugee, and that's kind of the point of the art too, is what I want people to see.
Do you guys have any like fallbacks or struggles throughout your creative process, or like when you're trying to do your little research or trying to feel inspired? Like what helps you find that? What you're like searching for without knowing what you're searching for necessarily?
So since I do Arabic calligraphy, I look for the verses in the Quran, and the ones that I like, I then pick, and then they go on the canvas. But I kind of want to portray the background that that verse was in and how that was said. So I think portraying the whole story on the canvas seems harder at times, because you are at the end discussing a big story, a big history. So I think that's one of the struggles that I feel with my art.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, like the history that you're referring to?
Yeah, so like right now I'm working on stories of the Prophet, and every piece discusses about the du'as or the prayers of different prophets, and that prayer was said in a certain situation, and they were facing a certain difficulty, and that's when they prayed. So portraying that whole story on the canvas is a big project, I feel like. So it takes time, and that's one of the struggle with that part.
So do you choose specific colors to portray like the emotions that you maybe feel when you're reading those du'as or the prayers, and then do you imagine like that time and that history in that and what they were dealing with? Is there a lot of are there a lot of research books in your studio and something?
No, not a lot of research books. A lot of podcasts, though, a lot of YouTube lectures. But the colors usually portray their story, or what was going on in their mind as described by some of the scholars, let's say. So not necessarily what I feel, but what I think they would have been going through that time.
That's really sentimental. Yeah. makes you feel like you can almost relate to it in a sense. And Nada, what about you?
For me, really, it's just thinking about how nobody deserves to be in a situation like that. And when people are most vulnerable, they shouldn't be photographed. It's because just looking back at it, maybe they'll see it again, they're in a better situation, it just brings back memories. And like as a Palestinian also, we're always photographed in like a bad light, or you just see like horrible imagery of us in the media, where it's like, well, we have a lot of life and passion and culture and things that are not shown. So it's like the same way I would want to be represented correctly, I'm pretty sure refugees want that as well. And it's like, some people didn't choose to become a photograph, you know? So it's just taking back that image, and it also always reminds me, there's like this, it's like a poem turned into a song, an Arabic one, and it goes, لم يعرفوني بالضلال التي أمتص وجهي في جواز السفر وأصبح جرحي عندهم معرض النسائح يعشق جمع الصور, which translates, they didn't recognize me in the shadows that enveloped me on my passport, but my pain became like a gallery for a tourist who loves collecting photos. And I feel like that's what's happening here. And it's like, it's just a way to take that back and to just give back to people who've been through so much.
That was a really beautiful poem. Amelia, do you have anything?
So I guess one of like the biggest struggles as an artist is artist block. I think everyone can relate to that. Basically lack of inspiration, and a lot of that comes with being preoccupied with other stuff and not having time for my artwork, or maybe I just can't find the right ways to express something. And when that happens, I usually just wait it out, because I prefer to think more about what I'm going to paint and make sure that it ends up being how I want it to be, instead of just winging it, I guess. But another thing with being an artist that does a lot of cultural resistance art is that I want to make sure I'm being culturally sensitive to the people or the issues I'm portraying, and also portraying those in the most accurate way. So, yeah.
Yeah, like you don't want to start a painting and then be really proud of it, which, you know, we all should, and then show it to someone, and then someone gets offended and it actually is offensive, and then, you know, you have to deal with that guilt, or you have to think about, why didn't I put a little bit more effort into just ensuring that it will resonate well with like a general audience, and then specifically to the topic that it's about, to make sure that it doesn't, you know, trigger anybody, which it can. I think that actually kind of relates to Nada's work as well with the images, because I'm sure refugees that have came to America and made a beautiful life in America with the resources that America has here. Maybe seeing those images from different countries, maybe not even their own, can see those images and maybe slightly even get triggered emotionally or mentally, or think, I can't deal with this right now. I'm figuring out how to resolve the issues that I have, and how to make it, and how to provide for my family and things like that. So that's really interesting. I do want to ask, following up with all of the wonderful information you've provided so far, is that have you guys thought about the connection with yourselves as like individual people and the art that you have been attracted to creating? Is there a link to that? Maybe Nayfa, you can start.
Maybe subconsciously there is something that I'm not connecting myself to, and that's what comes out, like from some thoughts I haven't thought about myself, and that's how it's coming out. I'm not sure, honestly.
I guess a lot of the work that I do has to do with Palestine, and being a Palestinian Muslim, I feel like I'm able to resonate with the work that I'm creating and really express my like inner feelings about it in a way that's not easily expressed by words. And a lot of times people don't listen to you if you're just talking to them. So art is a way to spread those messages in a more creative way. But when it comes to art that's not pertaining to something I personally identify with, such as like Black Lives Matter or something of the sort, I can't exactly resonate with those struggles because I'm not part of that community, but I try my best to be culturally sensitive when it comes to things like that and put myself in their shoes. And sometimes that involves talking to other people who are directly affected by those issues and getting inspiration from them.
Thank you. Rida, did you want to share with that, or how do you feel? Oh yeah, sure. So I was curious to know if, like you know, your work you deal with du'as and prayers, and then you look into the stories of when they were used and the history of that. Meanwhile, you know, Nada over here is dealing with images of refugees and reinventing them, and then Amelia is, you know, doing something else. And I was curious to know if you're on this path, if there's a personal connection with it, or, you know, is it influence from family, is it influence from society, or is it something that you've always been drawn to religiously, or, you know?
Sure, thank you. So the Arabic calligraphy was something that I learned in college. So it has been there, and while doing all of this for over a decade, you do learn about the stories, and those were the prayers that were taught to us, you know, a long time ago as children, and we have been saying those prayers as little kids, but we don't really indulge into the background until you sort of read more or listen to more lectures. With the architectural paintings, it was sort of just a connection that I wanted to build with Pakistan when I moved here. I moved to Cleveland, Ohio in the middle of December. And I come from a big family. And my husband at the time was busy with his work a lot. So it was a lot of alone time and a lot of the thing that I wanted connection with. So probably going back to architectural paintings, my background, because it is in interior designing, it was natural to be drawn to the architecture over there and build a connection that I wanted for myself at the time.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed listening to you guys, like, just deeply your insight into, like, a deeper insight of your work and your process and what you like to do, what you don't like to do. Or is there anything you don't like to do when it comes to your creative process? Like, has there ever been a moment where you feel like you have this pressure to create something that you don't necessarily want to create? Any societal pressure, just creative pressure maybe, anything like that?
So I think the pressure, I feel not something that I don't want to create, but just to be creative all the time and to be put on a spot, you know, anywhere, because, well, you know, we are creatives and artists. So as either artists or musicians or anybody, they are asked to be creative on the spot. Like now I have a chisel Sharpie in my bag all the time because anytime somebody can ask me, oh well, you know, why don't you write this? And they expect me to write it as beautifully as I would in the studio, which is not true, but I try to as my best.
Yeah, you don't have your tools with you everywhere you go and like things like that. I personally experienced that as well. Like when I started graphic design, everyone in my family was telling me like, you should do designs about Palestine, you should do this and do that. I'm like, I just want to create like posters and flyers and business cards. I want to create like, I want to work on my skill set. But yeah, that is funny. I feel like everywhere you go, if you tell people, oh, I'm an artist, they expect you to solve their creative problems as well. So it's funny to hear that. What about you guys, Amelia or Nada?
I definitely do feel the pressure when it comes to like cultural resistance and activism, because I want to create something that everybody can resonate with, but that's not always possible. And obviously there's a lot of global issues around the world, and there's only so much I can paint with such little time. So I sometimes get a sense of guilt by not creating something representative of a certain country or a certain culture. And I feel like I'm neglecting them, but that's definitely not my intention. It's just a lack of time, I think.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I totally understand that. So how do you deal with that guilt when it does come up? Because I personally go through that as well, and sometimes it lingers for much longer than I would like to, and then I have to deal with, you know, me versus myself, and then, you know, make an executive decision of, okay, we're not going to do this, or okay, maybe later on. So how do you deal with that guilt?
I mean, for me, there's different ways of spreading awareness about such global issues. For example, if I can't paint it, then I'll share it on social media, or I'll create conversations about it with other people. Yeah, art is just one way of spreading those messages, but there's tons of other ways you can do that as well.
Yeah. So you just do what you can, and then, you know, get rid of that guilt in that way, kind of, and do your best, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I try.
That's awesome. I think Nayfa wanted to ask.
Yeah, are there any like misconceptions or struggles with how you identify with your artworks and being able to sell your artworks as artists? Like, is there a specific audience that you try to target to try to get those sales, or how do you navigate with that?
So for Arabic calligraphy, of course, there is a specific audience. Most of the time it would be Muslims who would understand what's written on the painting. But the misconception regarding art are, I don't feel as heavy as, you know, just the cultural representation, meaning that you are representing a big society just by being yourself. So just having a brown skin, you are representing, oh well, that person, that Pakistani did that, and not with anything else mostly. So I feel like most of the time you're walking on eggshells just to be on your best behavior all the time, hoping to represent a positive image of something that people don't see in a positive light that much in the media.
Do you ever deal with the fact that because you're not Arab and you do calligraphy, have you ever heard that? Because I came across other artists that were Pakistani or Indian, and they would go overseas to like Saudi Arabia, and they would have to deal with that. So have you ever gone through that as well?
So I've never been to an Arab country, before, only Pakistan and then here, America. But the thing probably is that people don't expect me to know the Arabic language because I can't speak Arabic, and that is true, I can't speak Arabic. But other than that, it's not really that much, to be honest. Just that they do ask question, oh, do you know how to write Arabic, or do you know what this means or that means? But that's probably, I would say, to be honest, very short-lived, and once I explain, then it's okay.
It's good to hear.
If Nada, really, you have any way you like struggle with your identity, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in something that you're trying to target an audience to sell, but if you're trying to target an audience for them to have your artwork be like seen in a sense of being heard, or like trying to find people to relate to it.
Yeah, so I also dabble in Arabic calligraphy. That's something that has been more recent, but I guess the main target for that would be Muslims as well. And I think a struggle when it comes to trying to sell artwork is the price for a lot of people, because I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like I'm not gonna undersell my artwork, but I also try to not oversell it. I try to make it as reasonable a price for other people as possible, but when you're pricing your artwork, you have to take into consideration all the time that was put into it, the supplies. That stuff's not cheap. But yeah, and then I guess another struggle with like my cultural activism work, a lot of it can be seen as controversial to some people. So that's one thing I struggle with. And I generally don't like to share that part of myself so openly to like other people, I guess. Not sure like how to explain it in the right way, but
You mean like when you experience viewers seeing your work as like controversial, you kind of hold back a little bit more? Or what do you mean about?
so no, I guess it's just because of, so I have like a separate artist name, and usually I identify my work with that, but people who know me know that like it's me creating that artwork. But as a Palestinian who creates artwork about Palestine, I have to be careful sometimes when creating those pieces, to just be, I guess, diligent.
Yeah, to ensure the fact that you can continue creating without worrying so much about how it's going to be perceived, and where you'll end up as a creative or as a person.
And the fear of being targeted as well.
Yeah, like if you're posting a little bit too much about Palestine, for example, on Instagram, you get like shadow banned. I didn't even know like small accounts. Like my account, I would say, is a smaller account, but that happened to me once, and I was just like, wow, I have to be a little bit more careful, or just safeguard that creative freedom to continue creating.
Yeah, and it's really sad that as Palestinians we have to safeguard that creative freedom. Like you said, like I feel like we should be able to openly express ourselves to the world without having to fear of the consequences or what might happen.
Which links to our identity with being artists as well, which is why we have this talk today, to kind of shed some light on the fact that it does play a big role as an artist to be a Muslim artist and then a Muslim Palestinian artist or a Palestinian artist or a mix of those titles. So thank you for sharing that. Nada, did you have something you wanted to share as well?
Yeah. So in the beginning, people wanted me to make just Palestinian art. They're like, why aren't you focused on Palestine? Why aren't you just focused on Palestinians? And it's like, I am Palestinian, but that's not my whole identity. And it's the point of my art is to focus on everybody who's struggling, not just Palestine. So I got a lot of that in the beginning before people really understood my work. And another comment that I got, which was like in the beginning, I was confused because it was most of my art is like about children and like just somebody, he's reading a book and I would like make it so the book is like alive behind him. And somebody told me your artwork is too political. And I was like, I don't understand how this is political. I was like, how is somebody just being alive political? And that's when I started to think about like, so me as a person, am I like politics now because I'm Palestinian and I'm Muslim? So I just started to like get those things out of my head because I was like, no, I have a right to be open about who I am and represent who I am as a person, just like everybody else. Just because I want to speak about my country or I want to say that, hey, people don't deserve to die. You know, children don't deserve to die. They don't have to leave their homes. They don't have to go through the struggle. That's not political. That's just basic humanness.
As you mentioned, like your identity being political, I think as being a Palestinian, just being Palestinian, you already are a political person, even if you're not into it. But I mean, that's what our identity is. And I think the way you navigate with showcasing your artwork through, other countries as well, it's really an empowering thing to kind of recreate it and make it into something with a lighter meaning and beauty behind it than what's really going on at that country. But do you have any way you try to implement other symbols into your artworks?
What do you mean?
With, as you use figures mainly, are there any other forms that you add, like geometric patterns that relate to those countries or any sense?
Yeah, so it depends on the artwork that I'm doing. So every time it's like something different pops up. But when I was doing something about Syrians, I implemented Syrian tile art because a lot of people don't know like that Syrians are very artistic and they're very famous for the tile art they do. Or I implement like cultural clothes or things like that, like little things that make the culture pop up. And then that makes people ask questions like, what is this? Why is that here? And it gives me more of a chance to like speak about it. Because I've noticed like from past experience and just from observing others, when you come forward with just like a video of somebody dying or like a video of somebody who needs food, it's as sad as it is to say people have become desensitized. And as soon as they say it, they're like, no, I don't want to look at that. Get that away from me. Whereas where I like bring it forward through an artistic form, people are more open to talk and learn about it. And then it just changes their whole perspective as if it's like, I don't know how the brain works. It's just different.
I definitely do try to incorporate a lot of symbolism in my work, especially when it comes to Palestinian artwork, because symbolism is very important to Palestinians, and there's a lot of different symbols that represent freedom. For example, Handala, which in Amal's work over there, you can see it's a symbol of a little guy with specks of hair coming out and his hands are behind his back. So you can talk about that if you'd like, what that symbolizes, but Handala is just one of the symbols of freedom for Palestine, and others include the kofiya, which is a Palestinian scarf. It's black and white with the cross. I'm not sure. Cross stitching is tatriz, but yeah, I'm not sure what what it's called. Yeah, yeah, fishnet and grape leaf stitching. And olive branches are another symbol, and the dove is a symbol, and the key is a symbol for the right to return. So there's a lot of simple symbols that I try to incorporate when it comes to my Palestinian artwork.
You know, it's interesting you brought up the Handallah because the artist was actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think killed for doing political artwork that revolved around Palestine, and he actually had to flee the country after creating that for some time. And the Handallah represents resistance, and you know, just kind of standing your ground, like this is my homeland, and I'm not leaving, really. Did you have any questions?
Yeah, so we're talking, you know, it's getting juicy here. So there's like, you know, we're getting to a good point. I feel like we've broken down a lot of the struggles and some of the misconceptions and our personal influence versus society's influence on our artwork, and how that affects our identity, and then even more so our work as artists or as creative people. Are there any misconceptions or struggles that just come up one day and you're like, I wish I didn't have to deal with this today or ever? Is there anything that comes across your mind that just right away you're like, oh yeah, that one thing? Or is it something that's been so ingrained in you where you mentally maybe you don't even go there? It's not a thought that could come across your mind. It's kind of just something I feel like we've been conditioned to deal with. Is there anything that you kind of just wish, like, oh, I wish I didn't have to deal with this?
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing, going back to it, has to do with that fear as a Palestinian creating artwork about Palestine. That fear of like getting targeted for the work that I create and it being seen as something like dangerous, I guess. I wish I didn't have to deal with that.
No? Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. Some days I'm like, I wish the hijab didn't have so many misconceptions. I know we're talking about Palestine and that's like our cultural identity, but sometimes for me the hijab is a big one. So I feel like when I walk into a room, I just feel like sometimes people's eyes, I can just read them instantly, and I wish I didn't know how to do that so well. But I think putting the hijab on at such a young age, and I was a very shy child, and I was a very bad introvert. I've been working on that ever since like 5 years ago. I don't know. But yeah, I've grown accustomed to just knowing how to read people's eyes, like just knowing like, oh, they've never, I know when someone has never seen a person wear hijab before in public, and I'm just like, oh, they've never seen someone like me before. Like this is a moment for them. You know, today's like a day they probably won't forget. And you know, there's a lot of other things I could go into. But yeah, thank you for sharing. Nayfa, do you have another question you'd like to ask them?
Well, you started an organization back in Madison. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the organization that I started at UW-Madison is called Art for Change. It's an art activism org that essentially uses art as a medium to promote positive change on campus and in society. And a lot of the things we try to promote in my org is cultural diversity and inclusivity, activism, sustainability, human rights, all that good stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's the first year that this org has been up, so I'm still in the works of navigating through it all. But yeah, there was nothing that I noticed like that on campus before, and being able to associate art with activism since I found myself through Fanana Banana, I wanted to share that with other people so that they could also find their meanings as artists if that's something they were hoping to explore. And a lot of the different events that we plan to do, as it's still early in the semester, but like some things that I hope to accomplish going forward with my org include a mural for diversity and inclusion. And we're also doing an event soon with a collaboration with another org on campus to raise awareness for gender-based violence. And we'll also be doing collabs with other like Middle Eastern orgs on campus, and service projects and murals. And another thing that I want to do is art show fundraiser where we would get artwork from different students and sell them and donate the money to a nonprofit organization. So those are just some of the things that we're working on.
Well, that's really exciting. I can't wait to see all the things that you guys do and accomplish. What like inspired you to create that? Like you seen there wasn't a space on campus for it, but what made you think, okay, let me merge the two, art and activism? That is kind of like the style that you do with your artworks, but what made you feel that it was important to have on campus in like the capital city?
Well, with Madison being the capital, there's already so many movements that happen, whether that's protests or like other movements. I'm not sure, but I just feel like art is a really good way to express those messages in another way besides I guess talking. And I do remember during the Black Lives Matter movement, during those protests when they would board up all of the windows on the businesses on State Street, there were a lot of people going and doing graffiti on the boards, and I thought that was really cool because like all of the artwork either said like Black Lives Matter or it was reflecting that. And I wanted something to give to the students at Madison to dedicate to that, I guess, and expressing activism in a creative way in general.
Yeah, that's nice that you mentioned the boards, because I mean, art and activism in that sense, it really brought light to what was behind those boards, the reason why they were even up there to begin with. Well, I'm really excited to see what you continue to do, so look forward to that. Rida, you mentioned that you've been an artist for full time now for about 10 years. Can you tell us a little bit about the business aspect of it and how you kind of manage that, or like what tips or advice you would give to other artists that are trying to make it full time in a business?
Yeah, so I think the only thing I did which really helped me was to just be consistent, to show up, and to not wait for the creative energy to come and only then go and paint, because that could take a while. And most of the time when I'm already in my studio, already creating art, is when I have new ideas. And, just making art with a theme. And that kind of brings to the second point is, if you're consistent enough, you will have your signature style. And having your signature style that defines yourself and not copying from Pinterest or somewhere else. We do have a lot of medias available where we can, just go and start searching. But to really dig deep within yourself, and that would come with being consistent enough. And I think that really helped to sort of know what my niche was, and then develop from that.
Yeah, consistency. I mean, with that builds skills and practice. And as you said, when you're already creating, that's really where like all those other ideas come from. And you're kind of like, actually, I want to do this now. But any like tips on how you could target certain audiences with your artworks that are like not necessarily familiar with your artwork? Like how do you have those conversations with people who are not familiar with Arabic calligraphy or familiar with the Pakistan architecture?
So with Arabic calligraphy, I don't necessarily target the audience that I know probably won't be interested. That is just to sort of talk about it and to talk about the theme that was going behind that verse or behind that writing. But I'm not trying to sell them a piece if I know, they're not my target audience. One thing that a lot of artists do talk about is actually finding your niche. You are not making art for everybody out there. And that's one thing that you have to find that niche within a niche. Very small audience would actually be interested in art, buying original art, and then buying your art. So get comfortable with that feeling, and then target your audience specifically, not everybody.
Yeah, those are really good tips. So Nada, I wanted to ask you about your nonprofit, Bloom for Growth. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Bloom for Growth is an art-based nonprofit, and it uses art to educate people about what's happening. And I do display my art when I do set up for Bloom for Growth. There's also like a research aspect to it, where it's like there needs to be an understanding to the people, like what's happening, why is per se like the Middle East or Muslim countries, there's constantly something going on there. And like, how does war and conflict change people? Because usually when there's war and conflict throughout a country for such a long time or a region, the first people to suffer are women and children. Because when like an occupying force comes in, the first thing they do is they change the culture. Once you change the culture of a people, where it's like, okay, women are not important, children are also not important, men dominate everything, then it turns into a free-for-all. And that's where also like misogyny and all those things come in. So the research part of it is to understand the history of why these things keep happening in these regions, and just to educate the people, because obviously a lot of people don't understand, like they're always saying like, why are people in the Middle East always at conflict? Why are they so angry? Why are they always leaving their homes? Why are women oppressed? But it's like, originally the culture wasn't like that. But when an occupying force comes in, all of these things are kind of just like, you lose your hospitals, your schools, your education. Men don't feel like men anymore. They have to take it out on somebody. So that's the research portion of it, where it's like trying to understand that and figuring out a way to bring it to light, while also using art to help people talk about it. So that's where I am with it right now. I'm doing like a conference in March in Kurdistan for early childhood education, and that's part of the Bloom for Growth nonprofit. So it's just like mixing research and art and research to help reach people and educate them at the same time.
So did you start off making artworks and then it grew into, this could be something way more, or did the artworks come after you started the nonprofit?
The artworks came after, honestly. So first it started as like, that's where I would always get a lot of like, why aren't you doing something about Palestine? Why is it Palestinian? Why are you focusing like on Kurdistan or Yemen or these regions? And it's like, well, those regions are suffering too. And sometimes the regions that people really don't know about need the most help. Whereas Palestine, everybody knows about Palestine, you know, and it's just like, there has to be a different way to include other people without silencing them, but also concentrating on other places that need help. So that's where it started, just as a means. It started as like during Ramadan, just send over money so people had money to buy groceries, or just to have those things so you're not fasting all day, and at the end of the day you don't have food at home. And then it turned into Eid. Now people, they're done fasting. Eid is like a Muslim holiday that comes after Ramadan, which is a month of fasting. After fasting, there's festivities. Kids want clothes. Fathers usually give their children money or gifts and things. Mothers want to dress up. So it's like it became, okay, now we have to send something over for Eid. And then there's another one. So it just progressed from there. And then the artwork came in, and then the research came in.
It's really interesting how you were able to merge the two. Something that you're passionate about, how you can make light of it in a creative way while also being hands-on. So that's really, really interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, going off of that, I did want to ask. So I understand how being a Palestinian, other Palestinians will comment and tell you, like you said, you know, why aren't you creating about Palestine? Why is it about Yemen? Why is it about Syria? Why is it about Afghanistan? As someone that truly understands how war and being under occupation can change someone's entire family and entire culture, and then giving that helping hand to bring more awareness to that. How do you deal with comments from people, from your own people saying that? How do you deal with those conversations? Are there like sentences that you've kind of like just figured out, like, okay, this is what I'm gonna start telling people, this is what's been working? Have you ever been like in a conversation with someone, or do you not really give into it? How do you deal with that?
I guess it's different with everybody, because you can't use like the same conversation with every person, because everybody has a different way of understanding things. Some people want to feel like maybe Palestinians, when they say that kind of stuff, it's because most of the time they don't feel heard or they don't feel represented. It's like, if you're used to being shut down all the time, no matter how much representation you have around you, on the inside, you're gonna feel like, I'm not being represented. So it starts the conversation with like, I understand what's happening. I'm also Palestinian. I have my whole family's there, you know, things like that. I understand what's happening. But if you look around, every time like the conversation revolves around Palestine, it's like, how would you feel if whenever like you felt it, honestly, when people try to talk about it and people shut you down? So it's like, why are you doing that to somebody else? Like, other people need to be heard too. So that's kind of like when I try to use. And then it's also just the same thing, like explaining, like, look, there's a place here where people are struggling. They have the same culture as you. Most of them have the same religion as you. A lot of them have the same name as you. They have families like you. They have kids and things like that. And people by nature are not evil, and they don't want to exclude people, but people by nature are selfish. So it's just figuring out a way to like open their eyes without taking away from them.
I love that. Thank you. We have about 5 minutes left. I think the closing question that I would like to ask is, what do you hope to see more of in this area that we're in as Muslims, as Palestinians, as women in the art scene?
I want to see more of us.
Going off of that, in general, I would love to see like more art museums having dedicated gallery spaces for Islamic art. I haven't seen that in any museums that I've gone to yet. I know there's some around the US and around the world, but like if the Milwaukee Art Museum had something like that, that would be dope. Or or I guess just more spaces in general dedicated to Islamic art. But that's why I'm thankful for Fanana Banana, so that we have that space to showcase our work to the whole world. Sorry. Milwaukee, yeah.
I think just exhibitions like these ones where you, you have sensitive topics that you talk about and people are discussing and looking at art and minorities are represented. So thankful to MARN for definitely hosting this whole exhibition, and hopefully seeing more of these in, like high traffic areas, I think. So going back to the same thing.
Yeah. Going off of what Amelia said and what she said about having like a nice gallery with nice lighting and representation, I've actually been to the Chicago Museum of Art once with a friend, and we walked around everywhere and we were looking for like the Middle Eastern Islamic section. We found it, but it was in the basement and it was not well lit, and it looked like a scary basement that I would not want to go into. And I don't think anybody else wants to go into, but I only went in it because it had like Islamic and Middle Eastern stuff, and it just goes back into like how you play with people's psyches. Like anything that's well lit, people are gonna be drawn to that. They're gonna think it's beautiful. So people already think Middle Eastern and Muslim people are scary, and then you give them a scary basement. So it just adds to the stereotype, I feel, subconsciously. But like a gallery like this, which is well lit and everything is like beautiful, thank you, by the way. And so people come in, and it's like when something's well lit, you come in with an open mind and an open heart, and you want to look at it.
I agree. Thank you. I honestly, I didn't even know they had a section in. Yeah, I didn't know. Thank you for letting us know. I'm gonna like make it a field trip for myself now and go find this basement that's there somewhere.
I've been there too, but the stuff is very minimal, I noticed. Like
a small collection.
Well, thanks for coming and sharing your stories and like the struggles that you face and how you create your artworks and all. It was very interesting to hear and learn. And thank you for MARN for having this exhibition. Really
Yes,
appreciate it. For allowing us, to have such a spotlight on such an important topic that most of us relate to, that is just not widely talked about. And this was a really great exhibition to have that happen. So thanks for the panelists for being here, and thank you to MARN, and I hope the rest of you have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, thanks for Fanana Banana for moderating that. Woo! If you want to ask questions, how about we just do it one-on-one and have like a mingle? I'll turn the music on. And again,